encouraging everyone to be patrons in like an artist economy.
Yeah.
And I find it really interesting, like how we can encourage businesses to be patrons.
Yeah.
Like how can they do that? If they're interested.
I'm Matt Wagner. I own Hellion Gallery. I write art books, the Tall Trees of series. I'm one of the producers of the Forest for the Trees Mural Festival here in Portland, and I art direct labels for Gigantic Brewing. Well, I think so I distinctly remember that day talking about patronage, and it's interesting how the interesting part about that is that into that day, a person who works for a famous ad agency here in town took me aside and said, "Oh, I loved your talk." And we talked about this, and she goes, "I love your ideas about patronage." And she was like, she goes, "But like the new contemporary patronage for art is Instagram and Facebook." And I was like, "What?" And she was like, "That's the new patrons." And I was like, No. I was like, "There's no money involved." And she goes, "Well, a patron doesn't have to be money." And I'm like, "Yes, it does." I'm like, I mean, not to be argumentative, but I'm like, a patron of the arts isn't a fan. They're not a fan. They're someone who's supporting it, and not supporting it by clicking a like or patting someone on the back. They're supporting it by giving it money in order to keep the machine going. And it was just funny because that was the thing about patronage that I thought, oh, I don't want anybody to think it's like a social media construct, that, patrons are patrons. And, if you look at the Medicis and like those people, they were like, patrons of the arts. The Roman Catholic Church was patrons of the arts. They paid for it, but they paid for what they wanted. And I think they actually did value the art. And then we've gotten away from that to where you have this really small group of people, like sort of like the Peggy Guggenheim kind of people who like are private wealthy patrons. And so I feel like there's more of this like middle class patronage that can come around. And I think with Gigantic, with the labels I do with them, that is kind of the start of that. Like what you were just talking about with the coffee. So with Gigantic, everybody who works there and started the brewery, they're all like into independent music and record labels. I used to play in bands a lot, and I was on independent record labels. And I always liked the way it worked because, you didn't get paid a lot, but you did get paid. People didn't screw you over. There wasn't like all this like funny business talk about ways to like somehow screw you out of like 50 cents. It was more real and small. And it was like this basic level of understanding of, I need to pay rent, I need to buy groceries. This is an amount of money that will contribute towards that. So like when Gigantic, when we started doing the labels, I thought the one thing I dislike about products are the idea that you go to someone who's not familiar with your product and you say, make my product cool with some sort of art thing. And then that person has to, and you're paying them to be in love with your product. And so we kind of wanted to flip it and make it where the company is in love with the art already. And so we're going to take advantage of the art we already like to like brand ourselves and say, this is something we like. It's like if you like The Jam, or like Gang of Four or something like that, you kind of get a lot about that person from like their music taste. So if you have these really cool art labels, the beer is going to be quality. The people behind the beer are quality. And then we just picked a flat fee instead of doing percentages, because no one wants to wait forever to get paid. So as soon as you deliver the art, you get a check. It's a limited edition. These beers are made one time, and when they sell out, they're gone. So you get a flat fee one time. We don't own the art. We don't own the image to it. We don't have any license agreement. So you can resell the art or license it to someone else, but you get paid for it. And so I wish more companies did things like that, because Gigantic is a small company. They're not a big, they're called Gigantic, but they're quite a small company, and they're able to like put more money towards art than any company and I've ever worked with. And these guys are just like, let's write the check, it's cool, it's awesome, so. How many labels are we at right now? Wow, that's a tough one. I think 47, I think 47.
You could say like almost 50.
Yeah, or it might even be more. So they're all numbered
Yeah.
because they're limited. They're all limited edition, so they each have a number. So in the back of the brewery on the cooler, every time we finish one, we put a label up so that we know where we're at in the numbering. And so, yeah, I think we're around 47. I mean, I haven't done all of them because the other guy that helps with the labels at Gigantic is Rob Rieger, who created the Emily the Strange character in the comics. And he's also a good friend of ours and a good friend of the brewery. So between me and him, we usually get together and I'm like, I like this artist, I like this artist, and then we show it to the guys at the brewery and they're like, oh yeah, this is cool. And then between the four of us, we decide on who gets on a label. You know, the mural project is interesting. It's one of those things where this was our 4th year. It's called Forest for the Trees. And to be honest, the first year we did it, I was just like, I didn't know what was going on. It was like me and my partner Gage, I'd done a show with him in Tokyo, and he really fell in love with a lot of the murals in Tokyo. And he came back and he came to my gallery and said, we should do a mural festival. And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like these guys do this mural festival. And I was like, we have people come in and paint murals? And he's like, yeah. And he was like, would you help me with that? And I was like, yeah. You know, I was like, why not? It sounds like something interesting, even though I really don't have any idea what we're gonna do. And in that first one, it was seat of our pants. We were just like, well, what are the rules? And so we looked around and we figured out how to do it, how to bypass get around local laws and figure out how to fill out the right paperwork and do all this stuff. The one thing we didn't figure out was how to make money. And how to pay for it. So that first year was just me and him doing everything, driving people to their walls but we got great artists. They came in, and I think that was my job as curator, because I run a gallery, I could get a little higher caliber of artists to come in. But it's funny how in our 4th year now, this last year, it really has sort of struck home of what we were doing. I never really thought about it as an important thing or a big deal. I just thought, oh, every year me and Gage do this festival for 1 week, and we fly people here from around the world, and then we do it. But then this year we were being interviewed on one of the local news channels, and the interviewer, she said, she goes, so this year you have over 60 walls total. And I remember just thinking, asked, is that right? We have 60? And I was like, really? And then I thought about it and I was like, wow, holy shit, we've done over 60 walls in 4 years. And then I was talking to her and she was like, yeah, she goes, when I drive to work every day, I pass 4 or 5 of your murals. And I'm like, oh, so I guess we did sort of affect the landscape of the city, and then it kind of made me feel like, oh, this is kind of an important thing. It never was really that I never put too much thought into it. I just thought it was cool art to put up and and instead of having these buildings with these blank walls or really crappy graffiti on it, these businesses get to interact with an artist and have something beautiful on the outside of their building. Or even if it's not technically beautiful, it's a conversation piece. People come in and want to talk to them about it. So the businesses benefit greatly, because people show up especially if you're that little bar in Morrison, which has a Josh Keys piece. People stop there every day and take their picture with that piece, because they're like, oh, it's a Josh Keys mural, and he's never done a mural before. It was his first one outside for us. I don't really think the city appreciates it very much, to be honest. I mean, last year, me and my partner, we got recognized by the city council as contributing to the culture of Portland. But then I felt like everybody in that chamber was like, who are those weird long-haired dirty people? Why are they here? What? They're doing some art thing? And I felt like we were really out of place, and I'm thinking, and then everybody's thanking us, and I'm like, as opposed to thanking us, it'd be great to just get funding. I mean, it's great you guys love this, and all of our travel bureaus use it on their ads to get people to come here, and you guys put it on your posters. But what would be really awesome is just a check, And so right now we get most of our funding through RAC. They fund us at this point. The last 2 years we're almost completely funded by RAC. Regional Arts and Culture Council. They're just over here in the Pearl, and they're they give all kinds of grants for art and things. And with us, usually people go and they get a grant for one wall, and we're like, we want a grant for like 15 walls. So you're asking for a lot of money. And they're awesome. I mean, some cities, I don't know how arts works in other cities, but RAC is like a very cool local thing. And if you're an artist and you need funding for a project, they are the people to talk to. I mean, you may not get the funding, but they can steer you the right direction, and they're super eager and open to anything. And I'm always amazed because sometimes we're not, especially this year, we're getting away from just beauty. You know, it's too easy when you look at Instagram and all these like art, you know, like blog sites, like these magazines, because everything is about beauty and a cool picture. And you know, art isn't always about beauty or a cool picture. So we have murals that definitely test people in this town. And those sometimes are hard to get approved for funding because they're like, "Whoa, this is really ugly" or something. We're like, "Well, it's not ugly. It's just different." You know, it's like somebody else's interpretation, and they're like, "Okay, whatever you say, ugly." And I'm like, "Yeah, my definition of ugly is different." You know, or if there's something like controversial in it, they don't want that. Yeah, it's a public art gallery.
Yeah.
Those murals become property of the city. They become. We have a public art collection, like the Portlandia statue and all these things. So those murals are now part of that. So part of us getting the grant money through RAC is it becomes part of the city's art collection. And I like that because, you know, our museum is too expensive. It's ridiculous. You know, I love our museum, but there's no way a museum should cost that much money. When I can go to the the Pompidou for like €7, and here I spend $25, you know, that's ridiculous. And this is a way for people who can't afford to go to these kind of things and to see well-known artists in public for free and get up really close on it. You know, Faith 47 travels around the world. She's from South Africa. She does murals in cities. She has murals probably in over 40 or 50 countries, you know? And so I think that's our Josh Keys. You might not ever get to go to see a Josh Keys, you know, or you know, there's a ton of different ones. And so I like the free aspect of it for the viewer.